Wandavision was not just a continuation of Wanda Maximoff's story, it was also a celebration of television throughout previous decades. The series examined its new televised format in a very meta way, taking inspiration from past television successes and tropes to create a show that could commemorate the works that came before it. One of these tropes or ideals was the pursuit of the American dream, which was a very common aspiration for characters in television history, whether they actively realized it or not. The American dream features prominently in WandaVision as a recurring desire for Wanda, an underlying motivator for everything that happened in her fake reality. The creators of WandaVision made something quite different and fresh to lead the way for the future of the MCU. The showrunner, Jack Schaefer, weaved decades of television history, the MCU's penchant for meta references and humor, and the American dream into WandaVision. All of this made the show into a more impactful and emotional story, to which many audiences, both new and familiar to the MCU, could understand and relate. 1. The American Dream, a brief overview. Before getting into the deep dive analysis of Westview's sitcom reality being Wanda's American Dream realized, here's some context on what the American Dream actually is. The American Dream is a set of ideals that, when followed, promises happiness, prosperity, and success, usually through hard work and family values. This stems from the Declaration of Independence, which states, all men are created equal, with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The American Dream encourages the people of the United States to work hard, create a loving family, and the rest will be happiness. Throughout history, this is what kept people going, moving forward, working harder. The belief that if they tried hard enough, because all people are equal, they will find their success and happiness. The American Dream has been around for centuries, since the founding of America. It has been a motivator for civil rights movements, literature, and a basis for criticism and commentary on the socio-political aspects of the historical and modern world. In the past century, public perception of the American Dream has become more critical, in that it's not really that easy to work hard and succeed, as some people are naturally more fortunate and privileged than others. A huge way the American Dream has remained in the public mind has been through entertainment. Number 2. American Dream in media. As the American Dream tends to have the familiar concept of family and succeeding in life at its core, it's not hard to see why it shows up so often in media. Most audiences can relate to trying to have success in life and building fulfilling relationships, so this makes compelling and relatable content for entertainment. It just so happens these concepts are closely interwoven with the American Dream, and therefore feature heavily in films, theatre, and television. Sitcoms have been a popular source of television entertainment for decades, and have some pretty consistent tropes that fall in line with achieving the American Dream. Wandavision demonstrates how there have been quite a few changes in how these tropes are presented as we move into the modern era, sometimes looking at obtaining the American Dream with a more critical, realistic viewpoint to reflect the modern perspectives and situations. The chaos of life is presented more openly in shows such as Malcolm in the Middle and Modern Family, whereas earlier shows depicted a cleaner, ordered sort of mayhem for the characters. In sitcoms, the main focus is usually a family, or a group of people who act like a family, and their hijinks as they pursue happiness and success. It doesn't always work out perfectly for the characters, but by the end of the episode, the audience knows the characters will be okay, and the usual happy balance of life will be restored. It is perfect comfort television, as nothing is too unexpected or tragic, and each sitcom tends to follow an expected formula, with a happy ending for its characters. Sometimes, sitcoms will have a live studio audience laughing along at the gags and jokes to keep things light, as the laugh track is a reminder to the audience that this is just make-believe, and the point of the show is to make you feel good. This also makes sitcoms easy viewing, as the laugh track encourages you to laugh along. Similar to how Marvel operates with its meta humor.
It's crazy.
Scott, I get emails from a raccoon, so nothing sounds crazy anymore.
A laugh track tends to remind the audience they are watching a television show, and it is not trying to be your reality. Most of the time, sitcoms create a world that the audience will want to emulate. For example, in Friends, one of the most popular sitcoms of all time, the stories focus on building strong, lifelong friendships with other people, and how these supportive relationships can be the foundation on which individuals can succeed. Friends even inspired a trend in viewers copying Jennifer Aniston's hair in early seasons, as people wanted to replicate even a tiny bit of the fun and carefree lives these 6 friends were having in New York. Even when things go wrong, like in Modern Family or Malcolm in the Middle, at the end of the episode, the strong bonds between friends and family keep them together, supporting each other towards success. With the rise of social media and the 24-hour news cycle pulling apart their expectations of how people live around the world, modern society has started to realize that anyone attaining the American dream isn't as easy as it seems, and it also doesn't necessarily lead to true happiness. Entertainment that showcases the American dream has shifted to reflect that. For example, there's Mad Men. The 1950s tends to be the time period that represents the American dream, with its nuclear families, supported by the hard-working patriarch as the wife raises the children at home. And Mad Men begins with the start of the following decade. Mad Men shows the cracks in the facade, as Don has achieved the American dream when the series begins. Yet he is a drinker, womanizer, and has multiple failed marriages. Although he technically has achieved the American dream with his picture-perfect family and hard work, Don is not happy and wants more and more. Pleasantville has 2 teenagers from the 1990s transported into a 1950s sitcom. This sitcom encapsulated the American dream as well, but when the teenagers arrive, they bring about a sexual revolution and women's liberation, which demonstrates how rigid and restricting the sitcom's world actually was. They literally bring colour and modern ideas into the world, exciting and freeing the townspeople of Pleasantville, but also upsetting the status quo by doing so. Pleasantville critiques the American dream here by demonstrating its place in the past and how restrictive the ideas are, such as the misogynistic ideals behind the dream that predate the modern era's move towards equality for all people. The Great Gatsby is perhaps the most famous depiction of the American dream, written by wealthy socialite F. Scott Fitzgerald in the 1920s. Gatsby comes from nothing, makes his money, and seeks true love with a childhood sweetheart, but is rejected by her and the rich society, despite having achieved the American dream. However, Gatsby himself is flawed, as he has idealized Daisy and has decided once he has her, he will be happy, without considering her own wants and practicalities. He is so set on his dream, but despite his hard work and money-making, Gatsby is shot in his pool while he continues to hope endlessly that things will come together. In Wandavision, Marvel does not seem to take a proper stand on critiquing or applauding the American dream, which is unsurprising as the American dream and its peaceful, aspirational ideas go hand in hand with the moral values of many Disney properties. By the end of Wandavision, Wanda has failed to recreate the American dream family she wanted with Vision, but she doesn't exit the series hopeless as she continues to study the Darkhold. It's likely she still aspires to work hard to get the family she wants, but likely in a different fashion from Wandavision. Wanda is now done with the false sitcom premise she created, and is ready to embrace a more realistic approach with her newfound power. 3. Wanda's American Dream. From a young age, Wanda has desperately wanted her American dream. She grew up in a war-torn European country where her family watched bootleg videotapes of famous American sitcoms to avoid the frightening reality of their situation. This was their escape, but also bonding time for the Maximoff family. Her parents are lovingly curled up together on the sofa, and the children are happily sitting on the floor in front of them to get closer to the screen. It's a picturesque, happy family scene that echoes the families in Wanda's favourite sitcoms. All of the sitcoms focus on family as a central theme, and that is why her sitcom world reflects that. Her parents wanted to portray this fantastical, far-off American landscape as something for their children to aspire to, likely in a bid to get them to stop thinking about their current predicament in their country. These shows would also reaffirm to their children how important a loving family is. It's no wonder Pietro and Wanda remain so close with this education. The Maximoffs desire their own American dream, but are barred from it as they are poor and their country is ravaged by an ugly, brutal war. At the end of a hard day, their reality does not reset to a happy and privileged lifestyle, as seen in sitcoms. Their reality is violence and poverty. Sitcoms do not tend to show the nitty-gritty, harsh realities of real life. They skirt over the hard stuff, and even if things seem dire for most of an episode, everything is resolved by the end, usually with a happy or funny resolution. And the most important thing for the characters is to be with their friends and family. That's what makes a lot of the shenanigans they go through worth it. The earlier episodes of Wandavision best demonstrates the simplicity of the American dream. In the first episode, Wanda and Vision are happily married and living in a large, beautiful home in the suburbs. He's a working man and she's a stay-at-home wife, gossiping with her neighbour and new best friend in town. They are hoping for a promotion for Vision at work while also trying to fit in because they have secret powers that add to the hijinks. There are no life-threatening battles alongside the Avengers or risk of death. Yet, this reality is not stable, and in the first episode, Wanda is loudly and harshly reminded her American dream is not complete. They don't have kids, and they can't really answer simple questions about their life before Westview. This is a facade, and the part of her subconscious that knows this is screaming it through Mr. Hart.
Yes, what exactly is your story?
Oh, just leave the poor kids alone.
Well, really, I think it's a perfectly simple question. Honestly, why did you come here? Why? Damn it, why? Why did you...
Another interesting facade is the disappearance of Wanda's natural Sokovian accent. Throughout her appearances in the MCU, Wanda's accent has slowly become more Americanized as a method of adapting and hiding herself better as a spy and refugee in America. However, in WandaVision, her Sokovian accent is completely gone, and she speaks in a natural American accent. When she leaves the Hex, it returns, indicating this is another element of her delusion and roleplay to create her American sitcom reality.
I think I can. This will be your only warning. Stay out of my home.
It also erases her tragic Sokovian history, as a child who grew up in a war zone and was later experimented on. Wanda is putting pressure on herself to conform to her new reality and play the standard American, since it's based on the mainly American sitcoms she grew up watching.
Billy?
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking Tommy. Just a nice classic all-American name.
Tell me.
Pietro even points out Wanda's new accent in episode 6.
What happened to your accent?
What happened to yours?
As the episodes progress, Wanda's dream both falls into place and begins to disintegrate. She gets her happy sitcom family with 2 adorable, cheeky young boys ready to cause mischief, but Sword are closing in and ruining that dream, reminding her that none of this is real. It also feels like, as the sitcoms progress, Wanda is struggling to find a sitcom era that is working for her and the people of Westview, but since none of this is real and sustainable, it all falls apart quickly. However, the change and development of the sitcoms through the years also demonstrate how Wanda sees the American dream evolving to find a reality that allows her to have her dream. When the decades change, there is a distinct difference in Wanda's sitcoms each time to match the changing tropes and values found in each decade. In episode 5, the 80s decade, in which the inspiration is Full House, a meaningful lesson about life and family is introduced when Sparky dies. There is an emotional weight now that was typical of Full House, where there are lessons to be learned. In Full House, this doesn't disturb the overall narrative of the show too much, and the show still remains a light-hearted comedy. This also demonstrates the evolution of the sitcom, as it addresses a more serious side of life, adding a more realistic element to the narrative and moving away from a picture-perfect life. Then, in episode 6, the 90s episode, there is the chaotic family life reminiscent of Malcolm in the Middle, where the modern family isn't always financially or emotionally stable, but these conflicts are used for laughs. Despite this, the overall values of the sitcom remain, with the love and bond of family keeping everything together. The hijinks may have higher stakes now with crazier consequences, but in the end, it can usually be wrapped up within an episode. In the final couple of episodes, it's made clear why Wanda's reality focuses so strongly on the American dream and this fantasy. The flashback to her happy family before it's literally blown up has her immersed in old American sitcoms, pushing this ideal. After the Age of Ultron, she bonds with Vision over these sitcoms. And finally, it's revealed Vision bought them land for a home to grow old in a beautiful suburban neighborhood. This American dream of working hard and falling in love with a perfect family and home was ripped from Wanda with Vision's death. Wanda gives up on her Westview American dream in the final episode because it's not real and it's not possible to have it the way she wants it. She has also destroyed the livelihoods and well-beings of hundreds of other people in order to hold on to her false world. In order to obtain this dream, she had to repress many of her memories and emotions, as well as using a great amount of power to create the reality. When faced with her destructive and selfish actions, she chooses to free the people of Westview and erase her children, Vision, and home, returning to her isolation. There seems to be an acceptance from her that this dream cannot be real. Yet the final moments of the series hint at a darker intention, as the echoes of her erased children cry for her help while she studies the dark cold. Number 4. Using meta. Meta. Showing or suggesting an explicit awareness of itself or oneself as a member of its category. It is not only the American dream and sitcoms that are the basis for Wanda's reality. She also uses her own memories and experiences to form new ones within the hex. An example of this is the scene in which Wanda gives birth, where the dialogue feels very reminiscent of another traumatic and powerful moment in the past, the lead up to Vision's death.
No, there's not enough time for that. Relax.
We are out of time.
Look at me. Look at me.
Look at me.
I can't do this. Yes, you can. I can't. You can do this. Yes, you can. You can do this. I can't.
Yes, you can. You can.
Her reactions while giving birth feel more real than her previously manufactured sitcom moments. She is scared, and Monica has to comfort her because this feels real and unpredictable to Wanda. However, while this fear is familiar to Wanda, she is repurposing it to be a happier memory that leads to birth rather than death. The entirety of Wandavision is incredibly meta, not just from Wanda's perspective, but the filmmaking and story of the show. It's not surprising that Marvel decided to go in this direction, as their movies so far have thrived from their use of primarily meta humour and little winks to the audience through cheeky quips and references to how weird their world is.
Are you up for this? Are you? Look, I just need to know, because the city is flying. Okay, look, the city is flying. We're fighting an army of robots. And I have a bow and arrow. None of this makes sense.
I'm sorry, I'm confused as to the relationship here. I mean, what is he, your ward?
No. I'm Peter, by the way.
Doctor Strange.
Oh, you're using your made-up names. I'm Spider-Man, then.
Wandavision is the first official MCU television series, and it really takes advantage of the television format, creating a layered show that incorporates its own fake television show for Wanda. This is a great way of getting audiences used to the new television format for the MCU, while also giving them a little wink as the MCU introduces television shows into its cinematic universe. Wandavision is a celebration of television. When the show introduces these decades and tropes, it's never to mock them or try to improve them, but feels like a celebration of those eras and a study of how television has evolved and grown up with us. When Wanda watches the Dick Van Dyke Show with her family, she is full of joy and wonder, and that's how audiences are meant to feel when watching these episodes. I'm sure, like myself, many people have found television and cinema to be a great form of escapism from the mundane or harder aspects of life. There's obviously an underlying mystery to the strange decade-skipping Wandavision episodes that keeps us intrigued, but in the meantime, there are genuinely funny moments from Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany's performances. It's not all about the mystery, but enjoying the sitcom and its scenarios on their own merit too. These sitcom episodes have their own internal stories that are intriguing and fun and add to Wanda's and Vision's characters. Despite this, a huge part of the show's meta storytelling was a bit too on the nose for me, and it was mainly from Darcy as the audience stand-in. In episode 4, Darcy reacts to Wandavision in a similar way a lot of the audience did. Aww.
Long lost bro get to squeeze his stinking sister to death or what?
She recast Pietro?
This is also seen in small clips with Agent Wu, where he is writing questions on the board. This was not unlike all the forums online that gathered weekly to theorize over every little detail included in the MCU and the comic books to figure out what is going on. The questions are so obvious and on the nose, such as, is Vision alive? Echoing the questions audience members have had from the first teaser of the show months ago. While I do like meta comedy and little winks to the audience on occasion, this felt excessive, and like the Marvel creators smugly pointing out how dedicated their fans are and how well they know them. I think they can get away with this because the MCU is known for its meta humor, But it verges on too much, because I don't need another reminder of how nerdy and into this show us fans are. I'm living it. I don't think the MCU intends their depictions of fans in intense discussions and theory sharing to be mocking. They know they have a dedicated fanbase who enjoys the meta humor and nods, so to mock them would be pretty damning, especially as nerd culture is very in right now. I think their meta depictions of Darcy and Agent Woof theorizing and reacting were meant to be cute and endearing depictions of their audience. It just took up way too much screen time. Episode 8 also dips back into the audience stand-in trope by having Agatha audibly try to piece together everything when viewing Wanda's memories.
The broken pieces of you are adding up, Buttercup. I have a theory, but I need more.
It goes even further by using the real studio step from the first episode at the end of this episode. Again, this feels like an audience surrogate moment. And then episode 9 arrived. The finale. And with the finale came the inevitable big reveals, questions answered and plot threads ready for the next phase of Marvel movies. And it also answered questions about the mysterious Pietro recast introduced at the end of episode 5. To recap the Pietro storyline, Evan Peters, who played Quicksilver in the Fox X-Men series, was introduced in episode 5 as Wanda's long-lost brother Pietro, also known as Quicksilver in the comics. The audience had seen Wanda's twin die in Age of Ultron, but here he was, alive again, albeit very different looking. In the Halloween special, Wanda doesn't fully trust him, and their memories don't seem to line up.
That's not exactly how I remember it.
He probably suppressed a lot of the trauma.
He has the super speed, but seems vastly more immature and Californian than Aaron Taylor Johnson's version. In episode 8, Agatha reveals she was behind this reemergence and put him under her control in order to get more information on Wanda. Within episode 9, the final piece of the Pietro plot was revealed. This Pietro is truly not her brother, in any way. In fact, he is the real next-door neighbor to the Visions, and his name is...
Ralph Boner?
Boner.
Yes, not only is his name a weird out-of-place dick joke, but he is truly nobody and not a multiverse Quicksilver introduction as so many people theorized. When this reveal came about, I was annoyed, but I thought maybe it was just my hopes being too high and expecting too much too soon. I'm a big fan of the Fox series Quicksilver and really wanted the multiverse connections to start now. My partner was actually pretty pleased that the reveal was nothing, as they'd been listening to crazy theories for weeks, and this big one really wasn't overblown nothing. However, time then passed and my frustration has not subsided, and this is why. Unlike the theories wherein Dottie was Mephisto, or mysterious husband Ralph was Mephisto, or that Doctor Strange or Reed Richards would be making a cameo, the Quicksilver multiverse theory feels very much set up. The biggest indicator that the Marvel execs wanted the audience to believe this could be an alternative universe Quicksilver was by casting the very actor who played him in the Fox series. With many actors willing to join the MCU, it seems very pointed to cast the only other modern Quicksilver actor in existence. In episode 7, the sitcom's advert is for an antidepressant called Nexus. In the comics, the Nexus is a gateway that crosses dimensions, providing a pathway that allows individuals to access all possible realities. This further sets up the possibility of a multiverse plot point, as the adverts in the series tended to point to parts of Wanda's character, history, or world. Of course, early next year there will also be the Doctor Strange sequel named The Multiverse of Madness, so again, the multiverse theories are not ridiculous to consider. Wanda is set to play a huge role in that film. Throughout the series, the SWORD agents are trying to identify each member of the town. This attempt at identifying the townspeople also implies that none of these agents were able to identify the real owner of the house next door to Wanda's, especially as her fake next-door neighbor used the name Ralph for her husband, which then turned out to be his real name. Additionally, we find out Ralph's name for his headshot, implying he's an actor who's presumably done some work or auditions to put his name out there, as that headshot seems to be quite a few years old. Yet no one in SWORD could identify him, when this new-faced Pietro appeared and had direct access to Wanda. Even Monica believed this was some strange new Pietro and found out Ralph's real identity with the audience. I don't mind being wrong. I don't mind that Mephisto wasn't involved because really, other than the comic book connection, there were no solid in-show connections to warrant his presence. But I do mind being misled, especially as it seems an intentional move to trick the excited, theorizing audience by casting Evan Peters in the role. This reveal feels cheap, even more so as it led into a childish joke with his last name, and it's made worse by the suspension of disbelief that no one outside of Westview recognized a small-time actor that lived next door to Wanda and lived in her home with a starring role in her credits for a full day and a half. I think the meta elements of the show were intended to add a fun and lighter element to the show. Instead, they took it a bit too far. The audience surrogate moments were heavy-handed and excessive, and then the fake-out with Evan Peters felt cheap and intended to embarrass the dedicated theorists of the audience. That being said, there are still many people out there who believe this is another long con, leading to Evan Peters actually being a multiverse Quicksilver, but well disguised. I'll leave you to decide that for yourselves, though. In conclusion, the American Dream provides a great framework in understanding Wanda's motivations and why she creates the Hex. She wants her perfect world, but it is manufactured and can't be real, echoing society's modern feelings towards achieving the American Dream. Even so, at the series' end, her failed experiment doesn't seem to have dissuaded her from trying to get what she wants. Additionally, Marvel's trademark meta humor and storytelling plays a large role in the creation of Wandavision as a television show, both for the real-world audience and the in-universe audience. Marvel is able to celebrate the history of television and sitcoms, while also making its mark in the history by creating a genuinely funny and interesting sitcom of its own. It then uses the in-universe audience to react in a similar fashion to how the real-life audience would react, ensuring the MCU continues its use of meta-humor to relate to the real-world audiences with a sly wink, although to an excessive end.
Twins. What a twist. But I'm invested.
However, where WandaVision does not fall flat, at least not entirely to me, is in the depiction of Wanda herself and her mental health. So far, I've discussed how Wanda has created the world and why, but in my next video, we'll take a proper look at Wanda and how her emotional and physical journey has led her to officially become the Scarlet Witch.